My name is Simone Davis, and at 38 years old, I had dedicated nearly a decade of my life to Innovate Solutions, a leading tech consultancy nestled in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. From my office window, I could see the city's vibrant pulse, a constant reminder of the progress and potential that surrounded us. I believed in that potential, both for the city and for the company. I led the digital transformation department, a team I had meticulously built from the ground up, focusing on raw talent and diverse perspectives. We called ourselves the Phoenix team because, much like the mythical bird, we had a knack for rising from the ashes of challenging projects, transforming them into undeniable successes. Our strength lay in our unity and our shared understanding of the diverse market we served. Many of my core team members were Black, brilliant minds from various backgrounds, all bringing unique insights and an unparalleled work ethic. We understood the nuances of community engagement and culturally relevant marketing in a way that many of our peers, frankly, did not. This was our secret weapon, our competitive edge in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. Our biggest challenge came in the form of the Project Horizon initiative, a high-stakes, high-visibility contract that had previously baffled other departments. It involved revamping the digital presence of a major national nonprofit focused on urban youth development, a demographic that our team connected with deeply and authentically. Many saw it as a risk, but we saw it as an opportunity to truly make a difference. Mr. Sterling, our company president, a man whose polished demeanor often masked a subtle detachment, had initially seemed hesitant to assign us Project Horizon. He had voiced concerns about our niche focus and whether we could scale our approach to a national level. I remember his words, polite but laced with an underlying skepticism, during our initial pitch meeting. Despite his reservations, my persistence, coupled with our team's impressive track record on smaller, equally complex projects, eventually swayed him. He gave us the green light, though I sensed it was more out of a lack of other viable options than genuine confidence in our capabilities. It felt like a test, one we were determined to pass with flying colors. The Phoenix team dove into Project Horizon with an intensity that was both inspiring and exhausting. We worked late nights, fueled by endless cups of coffee and an unwavering belief in our mission. We conducted extensive community outreach, engaged with local leaders, and leveraged our diverse perspectives to craft a strategy that was both innovative and deeply resonant. We understood that this wasn't just about algorithms and analytics. It was about connecting with real people, understanding their needs, and building trust. Our approach was holistic, integrating digital tools with grassroots engagement, something that set us apart from the more traditional, top-down strategies favored by other teams within Innovate Solutions. The initial feedback from the nonprofit was overwhelmingly positive, praising our team's cultural sensitivity and the genuine connection we established with their target audience. This early validation fueled our determination, proving that our unique approach was not just effective but essential for this particular project's success. We meticulously tracked our progress, presenting weekly updates that consistently exceeded expectations. Our internal metrics showed unprecedented engagement rates, social media reach, and most importantly, a significant increase in donations and volunteer sign-ups for the nonprofit. The numbers spoke for themselves, loud and clear. I remember one particular presentation where we showcased a viral campaign we had launched, which garnered national media attention and brought in a surge of new support for Project Horizon. The room was filled with murmurs of surprise and admiration, even from those who had initially doubted us. It was a moment of profound pride for the entire team. Mr. Sterling was present at that meeting, his usual composed expression faltering slightly as he witnessed the undeniable success. He offered a brief, almost perfunctory, congratulations, but his eyes seemed to hold a flicker of something else. Perhaps surprise, perhaps something less positive that I couldn't quite decipher at the time. My team, however, was ecstatic. We had proven our capabilities, not just to the company, but to ourselves. We had taken a project that others deemed too challenging and turned it into a resounding triumph. We were ready for the next big thing, eager to leverage our momentum and take on even greater responsibilities within Innovate Solutions. We envisioned a future where our diverse team would be at the forefront of the company's most impactful initiatives, setting new standards for innovation and inclusivity. We believed that our success would open doors, not just for us, but for other diverse teams within the organization, paving the way for a more equitable corporate landscape. Little did I know that very success, that undeniable brilliance, would soon become the catalyst for a series of events that would challenge everything I believed about corporate meritocracy and the true meaning of leadership. The celebration of our triumph would quickly give way to a chilling realization of the insidious nature of systemic bias. Project Horizon concluded with an unprecedented level of success, far exceeding the nonprofit's wildest expectations and setting new benchmarks for Innovate Solutions. The digital campaign we designed led to a 400% increase in online donations within the first quarter, a figure that resonated throughout the industry and beyond. Our strategies were being lauded. The national media picked up the story, highlighting the innovative approach and the remarkable impact of the campaign. Several prestigious industry publications featured our work, specifically praising the Phoenix team's unique understanding of community engagement and culturally sensitive marketing. Our names and the companies were suddenly everywhere. Internally, the buzz was undeniable. Colleagues from other departments approached us with genuine admiration, acknowledging the groundbreaking nature of our work. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere around the Phoenix team. We were no longer just another department, but a recognized powerhouse within Innovate Solutions. Mr. Sterling, the company president, initially offered what seemed like effusive praise. He sent out a company-wide email commending the outstanding achievement of Project Horizon and singling out my leadership. He even called a special meeting, ostensibly to celebrate our success and discuss future opportunities. During that meeting, he spoke of our team's exceptional talent and innovative spirit, words that should have filled me with pride. Yet, as he spoke, I noticed a subtle tension in his posture, a stiffness in his smile that felt incongruous with his celebratory words. It was as if he was performing a role rather than genuinely expressing joy. I remember a specific moment when he looked directly at me, his eyes holding a gaze that was difficult to interpret. It wasn't pride, or even simple admiration. It was something akin to surprise, mixed with a hint of something unreadable, almost a challenge. It made me feel uneasy, despite the glowing words he was uttering. My team, however, was beaming. They had poured their hearts and souls into Project Horizon, and seeing their hard work recognized on such a grand scale was immensely gratifying. They believed, as I initially did, that this success would catapult us into a new era of influence and opportunity within the company. We felt invincible. We anticipated being given even more significant projects, perhaps even leading a new division focused on social impact or diverse market engagement. The possibilities seemed endless, and we were eager to leverage our newfound recognition to push for greater representation and equity within Innovate Solutions. But then, the subtle changes began. The initial wave of congratulatory emails tapered off abruptly. The informal invitations to strategic planning sessions, which had previously been extended to me as a department head, suddenly stopped arriving. It was a slow, almost imperceptible shift at first, like a tide gradually receding. I attributed it to the natural ebb and flow of corporate life, perhaps a temporary oversight. I was busy, my team was busy, and I assumed that the next big project would naturally come our way, given our recent, undeniable triumph. I was optimistic, perhaps naively so, about the future. However, the silence grew louder. Project proposals that I had submitted for consideration, building on the momentum of Project Horizon, received no response. Emails to Mr. Sterling regarding follow-up opportunities were met with polite but non-committal replies, often routed through his assistant rather than a direct response. My team members also started noticing the change. Their requests for advanced training or new software, usually approved without question, were suddenly met with bureaucratic delays or outright denials. It was as if a quiet, invisible barrier had been erected around the Phoenix team, isolating us from the usual flow of corporate resources. The initial excitement of our success began to curdle into a growing sense of unease. We had achieved something truly remarkable, something that should have been celebrated and replicated. Instead, it felt as though our very brilliance had made us, somehow, a problem. The air in the office, once vibrant with possibility, now felt heavy with unspoken tension. I started to question what was happening. Was it a coincidence? Was it just the natural post-project lull? Or was there something more insidious at play, something directly linked to the very success that had put us in the spotlight? The answer, I would soon discover, was far more disturbing than I could have imagined. The uncomfortable truth began to dawn on me. Our success, particularly as a predominantly black team, had not been universally welcomed. It had, in fact, triggered a reaction that was slowly, systematically, pushing us to the margins. The spotlight of our triumph was beginning to feel less like a celebration and more like a target. The subtle shifts quickly escalated into undeniable patterns of exclusion. I began to notice that my name was consistently missing from the distribution lists for high-level strategy meetings, even those directly related to digital transformation, my area of expertise. It was as if I had become invisible, despite my recent, highly publicized success. When I inquired about these omissions, I was met with vague explanations about streamlining communication or focusing on specific leadership groups. The excuses felt hollow, designed to deflect rather than provide genuine answers. It was clear that the exclusion was intentional, not accidental. New project assignments, particularly the lucrative and high-profile ones, were suddenly being funneled to other departments. Teams with less experience, and notably, less diversity, were being given opportunities that should have, by all metrics, come directly to the Phoenix team. It was a blatant disregard for our proven track record. My team members also felt the chill. Their ideas, once eagerly received, were now met with lukewarm responses or outright dismissal in company-wide brainstorming sessions. They were being overlooked for internal promotions, despite their exceptional performance on Project Horizon, while less qualified colleagues advanced. I remember one instance vividly, a major pitch for a new e-commerce client, a project perfectly suited to our expertise. I had prepared an extensive proposal, only to learn, through a casual conversation with a colleague, that the pitch had been reassigned to another team without my knowledge or input. The betrayal was palpable. When I confronted Mr. Sterling about this specific incident, his response was dismissive. He claimed the other team had more bandwidth or a different strategic alignment for that particular client. His words were polite, but his tone conveyed a clear message. My concerns were irrelevant, and my authority was being undermined. The isolation wasn't just professional, it began to seep into the social fabric of the company. Informal lunches, coffee breaks, and after-work gatherings that I once participated in seemed to cease or move to different times and locations, effectively cutting me and my team off from casual networking and information sharing. It felt like an invisible wall was being built around us, slowly but surely. We were still physically present in the office, but we were no longer truly part of the inner circle, no longer privy to the informal discussions that often shaped major decisions and career trajectories within Innovate Solutions. The atmosphere within the Phoenix team became a mix of confusion, frustration, and a growing sense of injustice. We had done everything right. We had delivered exceptional results, yet we were being systematically sidelined. It was a bewildering and deeply disheartening experience for all of us. I started to document everything: dates of missed meetings, instances of project reassignments, vague email responses, and specific comments from Mr. Sterling or other senior management. I knew deep down that this wasn't just a coincidence or a temporary phase. This was a deliberate pattern. The realization was chilling. Our success, instead of being a ladder, had become a barrier. It was as if our brilliance, particularly as a black team, had somehow disrupted an unspoken hierarchy, threatening the comfort and control of those at the top. It felt like a punishment for daring to excel. I began to see Mr. Sterling's earlier, strained congratulations in a new, unsettling light. His discomfort wasn't about our performance. It was about the implications of our performance. Our success had made him, and perhaps others, uncomfortable, challenging their preconceived notions about who could achieve what. The emotional toll was significant. I felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and a profound sense of betrayal. I had dedicated years to this company, believing in its stated values of diversity and meritocracy. Now, those values felt like a cruel joke, a facade designed to mask a deeper, more insidious reality. But amidst the frustration, a flicker of resolve began to ignite within me. I refused to let our hard-won success be erased or diminished. I refused to allow my team's talent to be stifled by prejudice. This wasn't just about my career anymore. It was about justice, about standing up for what was right. The invisible wall was there, but it wouldn't define us. It would, instead, become the very thing we would push against, a symbol of the systemic barriers we were now determined to dismantle. The fight had just begun, and I knew we were ready for it. The subtle exclusions soon gave way to overt sidelining, making the pattern impossible to ignore. I discovered that a major new client, a global tech firm seeking to expand its presence in diverse markets, had specifically requested Innovate Solutions' Project Horizon team for their upcoming initiative. Yet, the project was quietly assigned to a different, less experienced, and predominantly white team. When I directly questioned Mr. Sterling about this, citing the client's explicit request, his response was a masterclass in corporate gaslighting. He claimed it was a strategic decision to broaden the experience base of other teams. His words were calm, almost paternal, but his eyes held a cold, unyielding resolve. "Simone," he said, leaning back in his chair, "we appreciate your team's work, but we need to ensure all our departments are equally capable. It's about overall company growth, not just one team specialization." The implication was clear. Our specialization, our unique strength, was now being framed as a limitation. This wasn't just about missing out on a project. It was about being actively denied opportunities that were rightfully ours, opportunities we had earned through exceptional performance. It felt like a deliberate attempt to stunt our growth and undermine our influence within the company. My team, the Phoenix team, felt the sting acutely. They saw their hard work, their innovation, and their undeniable success being systematically ignored and devalued. Morale began to dip, replaced by a quiet frustration that simmered beneath the surface of our daily work. We continued to perform our existing duties with professionalism, but the passion that had once fueled us was slowly being eroded by the constant feeling of being overlooked. It was disheartening to know that no matter how brilliant our work, it seemed to be met with a ceiling, an invisible barrier to true advancement. I started documenting everything with meticulous detail. I kept a log of every meeting I was excluded from, every project we were bypassed for, and every vague or dismissive response from Mr. Sterling or other senior management. I saved emails, recorded dates, and noted specific conversations. My personal notes became a chronicle of systemic bias, a damning indictment of the company's unspoken policies. I knew that simply feeling discriminated against wasn't enough. I needed concrete evidence, a clear pattern that could not be dismissed as coincidence or misinterpretation. The emotional toll was immense. There were days when I felt utterly defeated, questioning my own judgment and wondering if I was overreacting. The isolation was insidious, making me doubt my perceptions and the reality of the situation. It was a lonely and frustrating battle. But then I would look at my team, at their talent and their dedication, and a fierce resolve would ignite within me. They deserved better. We all deserved a workplace where merit was truly rewarded, regardless of race or background. I couldn't let their potential be stifled by prejudice. I began to discreetly reach out to trusted colleagues outside my immediate department, subtly probing for similar experiences or insights into the company's shifting dynamics. I needed to understand if this was an isolated incident or part of a larger, more pervasive problem within Innovate Solutions. Their responses, though cautious, confirmed my fears. Other diverse teams had also noticed a similar pattern of being overlooked or having their contributions minimized after achieving significant success. The seeds of doubt were now blossoming into a clear, undeniable truth. This was systemic. The realization solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about my career. It was about challenging a deeply ingrained culture of bias. It was about fighting for a workplace where true diversity was celebrated, not suppressed. The time for quiet observation was over. The time for action was approaching. I knew that confronting a powerful figure like Mr. Sterling, especially with accusations of discrimination, would be a daunting and potentially career-ending move. But the alternative, to stand by and watch my team's potential wither, was simply not an option. The fight for justice was paramount. The Phoenix team had risen from the ashes before, transforming challenges into triumphs. Now we faced a different kind of challenge, one that required not just innovation but courage. We were ready to resist, to push back against the invisible forces that sought to diminish us. The weight of the ongoing sidelining became unbearable, and I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. My first step was to confide in Aisha, a brilliant legal mind and a former colleague from my college days who now worked as a corporate attorney specializing in employment law. I trusted her implicitly. We met discreetly outside the office, at a quiet coffee shop far from the Innovate Solutions building. I laid out all the incidents, the missed meetings, the reassigned projects, the dismissive comments, and the clear pattern of exclusion that had emerged since Project Horizon's success. Aisha listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "Simone," she said, her voice firm but empathetic, "what you're describing is a textbook case of systemic discrimination. The company is actively undermining your team's success, likely because it challenges their comfort zone or perceived hierarchy." Her words, though painful, validated my every suspicion. Aisha advised me to continue meticulously documenting everything, emphasizing the importance of objective evidence over emotional accounts. Emails, performance reviews, project assignments, meeting minutes, anything that shows a clear pattern of your team being treated differently despite superior performance, she instructed. She also cautioned me about approaching HR directly at this stage. HR's primary role is to protect the company, not necessarily the employee, she explained. "We need to build an airtight case before you make any formal moves. Otherwise, they might try to discredit you or your team." Armed with Aisha's guidance, I intensified my data collection. I spent hours after work, meticulously cross-referencing company records, comparing project assignments, and analyzing performance metrics. The evidence mounted, painting a stark picture of deliberate marginalization. I also began to discreetly connect with other Black leaders and professionals within Innovate Solutions, people I had built relationships with over the years. I shared my observations in general terms, asking if they too had noticed any shifts in how diverse teams were being treated. Their responses were a mix of cautious agreement and shared frustration. Many had experienced similar subtle forms of exclusion or had seen their ideas appropriated by others. This collective experience reinforced my conviction. This was not just happening to me or the Phoenix team, it was a broader issue within the company. One particular ally emerged, Marcus, a senior engineer who had always championed diversity and inclusion. He had witnessed the Phoenix team's exceptional work firsthand and was disturbed by the sudden shift in our treatment. He offered to provide anecdotal evidence and, more importantly, moral support. "Simone, what they're doing is wrong," Marcus told me during a clandestine coffee break. "Your team is the best we have. Don't let them break your spirit. We're here for you." His words were a much-needed balm, reminding me that I wasn't truly alone in this fight. The process of building the case was emotionally draining. It forced me to relive the slights and the betrayals, to confront the uncomfortable truth that the company I had dedicated so much to was actively undermining me and my team. There were moments of doubt, of wanting to give up. But then I would think of the Phoenix team, of their talent and their dreams, and my resolve would harden. We had worked too hard, achieved too much, to simply fade into the background. This wasn't just about personal vindication, it was about creating a more just and equitable environment for everyone. I knew that confronting Mr. Sterling and the company leadership would be a monumental challenge. They held the power, the resources, and the established narrative. But I also knew that truth, backed by irrefutable evidence, was a powerful weapon. We were no longer just a team, we were a movement. We were gathering our strength, building our case, and preparing to challenge the systemic biases that sought to diminish us. The seeds of resistance had been sown, and they were beginning to take root. The fear was still present, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce determination. I was ready to face the backlash, to endure the fight, because the alternative, silence, was simply not an option. The time for the Phoenix team to rise again, this time against injustice, was fast approaching. With Aisha's guidance and a meticulously compiled dossier of evidence, the time came to formally address the systemic discrimination. I requested a meeting with Mr. Sterling and the head of human resources, Ms. Albright, stating that I needed to discuss critical concerns regarding departmental equity and project allocation. The meeting was held in a sterile conference room, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. I sat across from Mr. Sterling, who maintained his usual composed, almost bored expression, while Ms. Albright, a woman known for her corporate loyalty, sat beside him, her notepad poised. I began calmly, presenting the data, the declining number of high-profile projects assigned to my team post-project horizon, the consistent exclusion from strategic meetings, and the instances where less qualified teams were given opportunities we had earned. I spoke factually, letting the evidence speak for itself. As I presented the irrefutable patterns, Mr. Sterling's composure began to crack. His face, usually impassive, flushed slightly, and his eyes narrowed. Ms. Albright, initially taking diligent notes, stopped writing and exchanged a quick, uneasy glance with him. "Simone," Mr. Sterling interjected, his voice sharper than usual, "I find these accusations baseless. We operate on merit, and your team's contributions are valued. Perhaps you're misinterpreting standard corporate restructuring." His tone was dismissive, attempting to invalidate my experience. I remained calm, presenting specific emails and internal memos that contradicted his claims, showing direct instructions to reallocate projects away from my department. The evidence was undeniable, leaving little room for his usual vague denials. Ms. Albright, sensing the gravity of the situation, tried to mediate, suggesting a review of my concerns. But Mr. Sterling, visibly agitated, cut her off. "This is an attempt to undermine my leadership, Simone. I won't tolerate insubordination." His voice was now laced with a thinly veiled threat. The meeting ended abruptly, with Mr. Sterling refusing to acknowledge the evidence and Ms. Albright promising a follow-up that I knew would never come. I left the room feeling a mix of exhaustion and a grim satisfaction. I had laid bare the truth, and they could no longer pretend ignorance. The backlash was immediate and severe. Within hours, I received an email from Ms. Albright informing me that my insubordinate conduct would be noted in my performance review. My access to certain company databases was restricted, ostensibly for security reasons. My team members also felt the pressure. Their work was suddenly subjected to intense scrutiny, with minor errors being magnified into major issues. There were whispers in the hallways, subtle glances, and a palpable shift in how other colleagues interacted with us. We were now the problem team. Mr. Sterling began to actively spread a narrative that I was difficult and unprofessional, attempting to discredit my character and undermine my credibility within the company. He tried to isolate me further, turning colleagues against me with subtle rumors and thinly veiled accusations. Despite the intense pressure, the Phoenix team remained united. They saw through the attempts to divide us, rallying around me with unwavering support. We held daily check-ins, not just to discuss work, but to offer emotional support and reinforce our collective resolve. "They're trying to break us, Simone," one of my team members, David, said during a particularly challenging day. "But we're stronger than they think. We know what we did, and we know it was right." His words echoed the sentiments of the entire team. The immediate backlash was painful, a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. It confirmed that I was not just fighting a biased individual, but a deeply entrenched system that resisted any challenge to its established order. But this resistance, this immediate and overt attempt to silence us, also solidified my resolve. It proved that we had hit a nerve, that our truth was powerful enough to shake their foundations. The fight had moved from subtle exclusion to open warfare, and I was ready for it. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce determination. I had unveiled the truth, and now the battle for justice would truly begin. The backlash was not an ending, it was merely the next chapter in our fight for equity. The internal backlash intensified, but so did my resolve to seek justice. With Aisha's strategic advice, I realized that the company's internal mechanisms were designed to protect itself, not to address genuine discrimination. We needed to apply external pressure to bring the truth to light beyond the confines of Innovate Solutions. Aisha connected me with a prominent civil rights attorney in Atlanta, a woman renowned for her work in workplace discrimination cases. After reviewing my comprehensive documentation, she agreed to take on the case, recognizing the clear pattern of bias and the strength of the evidence. Simultaneously, I discreetly reached out to a journalist I knew, Sarah, who worked for a respected local investigative news outlet. I shared my story, emphasizing the systemic nature of the discrimination and the chilling implications for diversity and inclusion within the tech industry. Sarah, intrigued by the story and the undeniable evidence, began her own independent investigation, interviewing former employees and cross-referencing public records. Her findings corroborated my account, revealing a history of similar, though less publicized, issues within Innovate Solutions. The news story broke with explosive force. Atlanta tech firm accused of sidelining Black team after major success, read the headline, accompanied by excerpts from my documented evidence and anonymous testimonials from other employees. The article went viral, sparking outrage across social media and within the professional community. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Innovate Solutions' social media channels were flooded with condemnations, calls for accountability, and demands for transparency. Clients began to express concern, with some even threatening to pull contracts if the allegations were not addressed swiftly and satisfactorily. Industry leaders, diversity advocates, and even some of Innovate Solutions' competitors publicly condemned the alleged practices, highlighting the importance of equitable workplaces. The company's reputation, once pristine, was now in tatters, its stock value beginning a noticeable decline. Internally, panic erupted. The board of directors, previously unaware of the full extent of Mr. Sterling's actions, was blindsided by the public outcry and the potential financial repercussions. They launched an immediate internal investigation, this time with external auditors and legal counsel. Mr. Sterling, who had previously dismissed my concerns, was now under immense pressure. He attempted to issue a public statement denying the allegations, but his words rang hollow against the weight of the evidence and the overwhelming public condemnation. His authority within the company began to crumble. My team, the Phoenix team, watched as the tide turned, a sense of vindication washing over us. We had endured the isolation, the gaslighting, and the backlash, but our unity and our commitment to truth had prevailed. The external pressure was forcing the company to confront its own biases. The atmosphere in the office shifted dramatically. Those who had previously avoided us now offered cautious greetings, some even expressing quiet support. The invisible wall that had been built around us began to crack, crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. The internal investigation quickly uncovered more evidence, including long-standing patterns of inequitable practices that extended beyond my department. It became clear that Mr. Sterling's actions were not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a deeper, systemic issue within the company's culture. The turning point had arrived. The truth, once confined to my meticulously kept notes, was now a public reckoning. Innovate Solutions, a company that once prided itself on innovation, was now forced to innovate its own internal culture or face irreversible damage. The fight was far from over, but the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. We had ignited a fire, and its flames were now forcing the company to confront the very biases it had tried to suppress. Justice was no longer a distant hope. It was a tangible force, gathering momentum. The external pressure and the internal investigation quickly led to an inevitable outcome. Within weeks of the news story breaking, the board of directors announced Mr. Sterling's immediate resignation, citing a need for new leadership aligned with the company's evolving commitment to diversity and inclusion. It was a victory, not just for me, but for every individual who had been marginalized. His departure sent a clear message throughout Innovate Solutions: discrimination would no longer be tolerated. The company, reeling from the public backlash, embarked on a comprehensive overhaul of its diversity policies, hiring a dedicated chief diversity officer and implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all employees. For the Phoenix team, the change was palpable. The invisible wall dissolved, replaced by a renewed sense of belonging and recognition. We were no longer sidelined, our expertise was actively sought, and our voices were finally heard in strategic discussions. The company was genuinely trying to make amends. I was offered a promotion to a newly created executive role, Vice President of Inclusive Innovation, a position that would allow me to shape the company's future projects with a strong emphasis on equity and diverse market engagement. It was a powerful acknowledgement of my fight and my vision. After careful consideration and consultation with Aisha and my team, I accepted the role. I realized that true change often happens from within, and I was now in a position to drive that change, to ensure that no other team, no other individual would experience the isolation and discrimination we had endured. My first initiative as VP was to launch the Phoenix Rising Mentorship Program, specifically designed to identify and nurture talent from underrepresented groups within Innovate Solutions. We also established a transparent project allocation system, ensuring that merit, not bias, dictated opportunities. The company, under its new leadership, publicly apologized for the past injustices, acknowledging the harm that had been done. It was a difficult but necessary step towards healing and rebuilding trust, both internally and externally. The journey was long, but we were finally on the right path. I also made sure that every member of the Phoenix team received the recognition and advancement they deserved. Their resilience, their loyalty, and their unwavering belief in our mission had been instrumental in our collective triumph. We had faced adversity together, and we had emerged stronger. Reconnecting with my colleagues, those who had previously distanced themselves, was a gradual process. Some genuinely expressed remorse, while others simply acknowledged the shift in power dynamics. I focused on rebuilding relationships based on mutual respect and a shared commitment to a more inclusive future. The experience transformed me both professionally and personally. I learned the profound importance of speaking truth to power, of standing up for what is right, even when the odds seem insurmountable. My voice, once silenced, had become a catalyst for change. My story, once a painful secret, became a source of inspiration. I was invited to speak at industry conferences, sharing my journey and advocating for equitable workplaces. I found purpose in transforming my personal struggle into a platform for broader social impact, empowering others to challenge discrimination. The fight for justice is never truly over, but this chapter of my life had a triumphant ending. I was no longer just Simone Davis, the department head. I was Simone Davis, the leader who had challenged systemic bias and helped reshape a corporate culture. My new office, overlooking the vibrant city of Atlanta, felt different. It wasn't just a workspace. It was a symbol of reclamation, a testament to the power of resilience and the unwavering belief in a more equitable future. The horizon was clear, and it was filled with new possibilities. If you're watching this and facing your own battles against prejudice or systemic barriers, remember my story. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see it. Your voice is power. Stand firm, gather your allies, and never stop fighting for the justice you deserve. The backlash might be immediate, but so too can be the triumph.